On this week's show, Amazon announces a rate increase for FBA sellers for the holidays, Etsy expands their make an offer program, and a jewel thief in the UK proves to be a pretty terrible reseller. Alexians, welcome to episode number 214 of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I will be your host. We've got a little bit of reselling news and a little bit of a what sold recap at the back half of the show. It was a pretty busy week last week for me. Not quite as good as the last 2 weeks, but I did sell quite a few things, but there wasn't anything super huge there, but there are a few interesting things that we'll take a look at. So if that's your favorite part of the show, that is coming in the second half. But let's start with some reselling news.
News updates.
Amazon has announced that they will be raising fulfillment fees during the holiday shopping season. Amazon will raise fees for sellers using its FBA fulfillment service during the holidays. In a post on Tuesday, Amazon said the annual holiday peak fulfillment fee for fulfillment by Amazon, that's a mouthful, will apply from October 15th of this year to January 14th of 2024. This seasonal fee, they said, is similar to those charged by other major carriers and covers increased fulfillment transportation operating costs during the busy holiday shopping season. The article over on e-commerce Bytes points out that to some extent they do have a point. We're still waiting to see if USPS announces a holiday surcharge this year. They have done it 3 years in a row, so this would be the fourth consecutive year. I don't have any reason to believe that they won't be doing that again, unfortunately, but we've yet to hear anything official. Amazon did say that this 2023 holiday peak fulfillment fee rate will be the same as last year's rate for U.S. and Canada FBA sellers. The full announcement with links to all the details is available over on Amazon Seller Central, and there is a link in this article, and I, of course, will link to this article and all of these in the show notes and the video description below. Amazon has also started something different. They're now copying Etsy and eBay by using an off-site ad program. Sellers who pay for extra visibility through sponsored product ads on Amazon may now have their ads appear off Amazon as well. Amazon announced this on Wednesday and said they were expanding sponsored products ads to other apps and websites. All such ads will link back to the Amazon product page. They said, quote, "We will start small, learn, and expand as we see meaningful opportunities to enable delightful discovery and shopping experiences," they said. Early partners include premium apps and websites that include Pinterest, BuzzFeed, Hearst Newspapers, Raptive, and Ziff Davis brands like Lifehacker and Mashable. Amazon-sponsored products are a cost per click ad. So anytime somebody clicks one of these ads, you as the advertiser are going to be charged whatever the prevailing rate, whatever you've bid for that click is. Amazon explains on their website. Amazon said sellers don't need to take any action. Your sponsored products ads will automatically show up when we think a customer is likely to be interested in your product based on relevant page context, the campaign, and cost per click parameters that you have already established. So if your bid is high enough and they think whatever site the potential buyer happens to be on might be a trigger for someone to make a purchase, they will show them that ad. And if that person then clicks, you will be charged. Amazon did say that advertisers can choose not to have their ads served on specific apps and websites, but that merchants may prefer to be able to simply turn off the feature altogether, particularly those who advertise using a network where they don't want ads to appear. Amazon said a business may choose to advertise on third-party app or site to drive traffic to their products and use sponsored products to drive traffic to their listings on Amazon. So like as is the case with all of these people who are trying to sell advertising, they're, of course, suggesting that you do all of these things at the same time, which may not necessarily be a bad strategy, but it could potentially get quite expensive if you get a lot of clicks off-site and don't ultimately make a lot of sales. So the announcement is available if you want to read more details on the About Amazon blog. If you are a seller on Amazon, let me know what you think of this. I know Etsy essentially forces almost all of their sellers to participate in their offsite ad program, and there have been some times where their fee is 15% of the total. And that, of course, includes shipping. So sometimes I've got international orders. I had one the other day that I had a person who bought an $18 book, but there was $35 plus in shipping because it was going all the way to Australia. And by the time you tacked on the offsite fees and all the rest of the fees on this $18 sale, I made like $1.25 on the deal. So yes, it's a sale that I might not have made otherwise, but it was not really a very profitable sale. So let me know if you think you would take advantage of this. Someone we haven't talked about in quite a while, Depop, is updating their Depop protection limits for sellers. This goes into effect on September 3rd. This is a safety net for sellers, but it's only for the United Kingdom and the US. To qualify for Depop protection, the following conditions must all be met. The sale must have occurred through the Depop app or website using the buy button. The item should have been shipped within 5 days from the transaction date. The item was lost or damaged during transit, including cases where returns resulted in loss or damage. That is new. They only initially covered the potential loss going one way. If this is a return and the item gets damaged, they say they will pay as well. And lastly, that the shipment was sent to the buyer's address as indicated on the sales receipts. There is also a change in the protection limits. Sales up to £250 or $300 are covered under Depop protections, encompassing the item's price, shipping fees, and applicable taxes. So it's all lumped into one. Depop suggests sellers should consider additional insurance options for sales exceeding these thresholds. Previously, and until this new policy goes into effect on September 3rd, there was no limit on the protection amount. So they're capping it at £250 or $300, and that is inclusive of taxes and shipping as well. It's important to note, this article says, that bundle sales are considered a single transaction rather than individual items within these limits. So it's not a per item limit, but a per shipment limit. So if you sell 3 things for $450, it's not going to be covered. So just be aware that if you are a Depop seller, these protection limits are changing. I don't know. I don't sell on Depop, so I don't know what kind of damage and fraud there is over on Depop, but these limits are, for me, they're moving in the wrong direction, but that's neither here nor there. In the event that Depop notifies a seller about a problem with a shipment that was sent using a Depop shipping label, specific steps must be taken. 1, they require you to respond promptly to all communication from Depop, including providing whatever the requested information is. For sales that were processed through PayPal, you must engage in the PayPal dispute resolution process, including any available appeals. To qualify for Depop protection, sellers need to furnish evidence of both an initial PayPal claim and eligibility for Depop protection. So if you are accepting PayPal over on Depop, rather than using, I guess, their in-house payment method, you need to go through PayPal before you can even file a claim with Depop to get reimbursed for a lost item. So 2 important changes. You now have to use their labels. You can't use third-party labels. So if you're like me and use Pirate Ship, that no longer is going to count. You have to use Depop's labels. Previously, that was not the case. And secondly, sellers who use PayPal, as I just mentioned, now have to engage with PayPal first, using their resolution process as the primary coverage, and importantly, exhaust all of your potential appeals before you're eligible. There are certain scenarios where Depop protection will not apply at all. Sales conducted outside the Depop buy button, such as direct money transfers, PayPal, Venmo, and bank transfers. Items, of course, listed on Depop's prohibited items list. Items shipped using methods other than Depop purchase shipping labels for sellers in the US and the UK. Again, that's a new requirement. Sellers located outside the US or UK do not have access to this program, period, the end. It is limited to just these 2 regions. This article says that appears to be a new requirement, as the previous standard was all. So if you're not in the United States or the United Kingdom, you are not going to be eligible for this program, at least the way this article reads, at all. In-person handovers do not qualify, and failure to meet any of the eligibility criteria established. That is broad and vague enough to make one think they might not be paying out a lot of claims on this. So Just be aware that if you are a seller over on Depop, they have made it much more difficult to recover a loss if an item is lost or damaged. This article notes that they think the real reason for all these requirements is a desire by Depop to move more sellers to their own in-house payment system, Depop Payments. Selling via Depop Payments removes the burden of having to go through PayPal resolution first. So if you're using PayPal, this may be a good time to consider switching to Depop's payment method. I don't know. Again, I'm not on there. I don't know what their fee structure is. I know PayPal just announced also, and I don't have an article on it this week, but they have also announced hidden in their terms of service that their rates are going up as well. So I don't know what Depop's rates are. If it's competitive, if it is, I would probably suggest that you switch. If it's not, then be aware that these things have changed. The major change this article points out that sellers might focus on is the new limit on Depop's protection scheme. For most sales, that won't be a factor, but if a seller has a higher value transaction, then it will require them to consider buying additional insurance rather than relying on this program. So Depop sellers, be aware, look into this. It goes into effect on September 3rd. I've talked about Etsy's make an offer feature a couple of times on this show, and that I've been enrolled in the beta and I've not really had much success with it. I've had literally still just the one offer, but Etsy appears to believe that they have been fairly successful with this because they are now expanding the feature. Etsy began testing the feature back in March and continues to expand it. This week it announced several improvements. One, you may now select individual listings. You can pick and choose which listings you'd like to receive offers on instead of having to choose from suggested listings. You can turn it on and off as you see fit, which is new. You decide when is the best time to enable offers for your listing. You can encourage shoppers to buy in bulk. You can set a quantity when they make an offer, so you can easily provide personalized bulk discounts while moving inventory faster. And lastly, expanded availability. We started with a group of select U.S. shops. Now, all sellers who have their shop currency set to U.S. dollars now have access to make an offer in the marketing tab within Shop Manager under sales and discounts. So that's one of the other things that they did, was they made the editing and adjusting of your make an offer program much, much more visible and easy to get to on the desktop app. It did say that sellers could not turn on the feature using the Etsy seller app on mobile. For now, if you want to turn it on, you need to log into Shop Manager in a browser on your desktop or a mobile device. You cannot use the mobile app. You can do it on your phone, but you need to be in a mobile browser. For sellers wondering about the impact of offers on their star seller status, Etsy said offer messages don't count towards your star seller response rate. It also noted that buyers' offers are not buying, explaining if you send the buyer an adjusted price, they have 48 hours to check out at the price unless the item sells first. So while the offers are going back and forth, the item is still available for sale if someone else wants to either make another offer or buy it at full price. The offer does not prevent someone else from purchasing the item. If you are a seller on Etsy, were you enrolled in the beta, and what was the effect for you? Did you get any offers? You can let me know if you're watching on YouTube by leaving a comment down below. And lastly, if you follow me over on Instagram, I posted this, I believe, on Saturday. This is from, I think, Business Insider. Jewelry worth up to $63,000 was stolen from one of the world's top museums and sold on eBay for as little as $50. The post I put up over on Instagram said this person was most definitely not a reseller. Most of us are trying to do the other thing. We're trying to spend $50 and turn it into 63 grand, not turn 63 grand into $50. But I guess if you stole this stuff, it's all free money to you. Several jewelry items worth up to 63 grand were stolen from the British Museum in London. These items later appeared on eBay, priced for as little as $50. A museum curator suspected of being behind the thefts was fired, and police are currently investigating. This curator has been fired after stolen jewelry was found being sold cheaply on eBay. Some of the items were worth up to approximately $63,000 and were listed, as I said, on eBay for as little as $50, according to the British newspaper The Telegraph. An antiquities expert reported suspicion that a staff member was stealing from secure vaults at the museum back in 2013, so a decade ago. And the missing items began turning up on eBay 3 years later. So this is not This just didn't happen last week. This has been going on for a decade. That's crazy. Peter Higgs, 56, who held the position of curator of Mediterranean cultures at the museum for over 3 decades, was fired after an internal investigation. His 21-year-old son maintains his father is innocent, he said, but the museum said on Wednesday that several items of jewelry made of gold, semi-precious stones, and glass dating from between 1500 BC and the 19th century AD were among those missing. Other items, they added, had been damaged. One piece of Roman jewelry made from onyx that a dealer said was valued at 25,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds, or somewhere between $32,000 and $63,000 was listed on eBay with a minimum price of 40 pounds back in 2016, but nobody even made a bid. The things you would like to have known. You probably would also be in trouble had you bought it and then tried to resell it anyway, but that's amazing. Police, as they said, are now investigating the thefts. The museum has not, for their part, properly cataloged all 8 million items in its collection, which makes it easier for thefts to go undetected, sources told the Telegraph. So this may be the tip of the iceberg. There may be more people doing this because it sounds like it's pretty easy to do because this museum has not cataloged their stuff. That is just crazy to me. I can't imagine how you would not. I mean, my little shop, I'm organized. I know where everything is. And a museum with stuff worth 5 figures isn't cataloged. Go figure. Just crazy. You can let me know again what you think of that by leaving a comment down below, or of course you can email me at galaxycds@gmail.com if you're listening to the pod. With that, speaking of sales, let's talk about some stuff that's sold recently. As I mentioned, it was transaction-wise, it was really a fairly busy week. I think I sold 94 listings that sold throughout the week, which is pretty good. The last couple of weeks were both over 100, but certainly this is much better than the 60 and 70 that we were doing kind of at the beginning of the summer. So all in all, I can't complain. It was a fairly good week, but there's not a lot of big ticket stuff here. I think the biggest thing on this list is less than $50, but this first item is a book. Thoroughbreds, New York Central's 464 Hudson. This was a large format hardcover about steam engines from the New York Central Railroad. I picked this up at an estate sale for $3 a couple of weeks ago. I had it listed for $24.99 or best offer. Got a watcher, sent out my standard 15% off offer, and sold it for $21.24. This was a really old book. It's the same thing, $24.99 plus shipping, 15% offer. Went out, sold for $21.24. This is The Works of William Shakespeare, published by Thomas Y. Crowell and Company. This was the American edition, published in the early 1900s. It was in fairly decent shape. Old book I have had for a while. I have probably sent out 20 offers previously on this book. It gets a lot of watchers. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's a fairly ornate looking cover, but for some reason, nobody pulled the trigger until last week. This is an item that I had picked up as part of a big bulk buy, so I'm into this for about 16 whole cents. An old romance book. I've had this thing for a long time. The actual lot was very, very good. I bought a huge lot of vintage, like late 1920s through late 1940s romance hardcovers from some folks. I had gone to their garage sale. This was a couple of years ago, and they mentioned that I believe it was his late mother had collected these books, and they wanted way too much money for them. They were trying to get $6 a piece for the books. And I offered a bulk offer that was probably closer to $1 or $1.25 a book, because as I looked through the titles, they had sent me some photos. There was a lot of stuff in there that just was not going to be very good. That was going to have to either be donated or otherwise discarded. But there were some pretty good books in there. Here's one called The Man I Love by Norma Patterson. This was a hardcover with its dust jacket, published by Farrar and Reinhardt back in 1940. I had it listed originally for $49.99 or best offer. It's in my current 50% off sale. As I mentioned in the last episode, I'm running some pretty steep discounts trying to blow out some of this older merchandise. It did sell at 50% off, $24.99 plus media mail shipping for a book I own for less than $2. Here's an item I picked up at an estate sale just a couple of weeks ago for $3. Whole Tones, The Healing Frequency and the Sound of Healing. This is a kind of a combination package. It's a trade paperback book and a 7 CD set. It was published by a writer or an artist called Michael Tyrell. It was how to use music and relaxation to help heal yourself. Again, I picked it up for a couple of bucks, sold for $27.99 plus media mail shipping. I mentioned that I had picked up a huge lot of books by McFarland and Company Publishing about old film and radio. These continue to sell pretty well. This is Fem Noir, Bad Girls of Film. It was written by Karen Burroughs Hansberry. It was a really cool illustrated book, had lots of great pictures of these old kind of vintage bad girls of film. It was published back in 1998. Had it listed for $34.99. I'm into it for $2. And again, I sent out an offer for 15% off and sold it for $29.74 plus shipping. This was an interesting item. I found out in a garage at an estate sale I was at, and there were no price on it. So I took it up to the desk, and she said she'd sell it to me for $1. And I was like, I am in. This is the Ford Model A Judging Standards and Restoration Guidelines from 1989 that dealt with the Ford Model A from 1928 through 1931. So this was put out by a combination of an auto club and actual Ford Motor Company. And it is essentially a binder full of instructions to judges from these shows of the types of things that they should be looking for when judging these Model A's at car shows. Really interesting item. As soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, that's going to be a winner. And it was. I picked it up for $1. I had it listed for $39.99. Sent out my 15% off offer to a watcher and sold it for $33.99. Old book. Again, I talk about kind of college and high school yearbooks. This is a little bit different, but it was in kind of the same lot of stuff that I purchased. This is the Songs of Alpha Phi from 1948. It's a hardcover. It also had a 46th Biennial Convention Songs Program from 1966, which was stuck inside the book, which kind of set this one apart from some of the others that were out there. This actually sold over on Mercari. I own it for $3 and sold for $36 with free shipping. I did have someone reach out to me this week and asked about media mail shipping on Mercari and Etsy. And for those of you who are not aware, they do both offer media mail shipping. So if you sell those type of items on either of those sites, you can use media mail shipping. But as I mentioned to the person who asked the question, be aware that Mercari is not charging you the actual USPS rate. They are charging a slightly higher rate. I want to say it's 60, almost 70 cents more than what you could get if you went through Pirate Ship or someone like that. So just be aware of that. But they did recently add media mail shipping to Mercari. So if that's the type of stuff that you sell, you can do that on both of those sites. This was kind of interesting. So this is part of, again, it's a big lot of books that I picked up. I own it for probably 3.5 cents. Sound the Alarm from Saudi Arabia. It was written in 1980, I believe. This is a second edition, written by a guy named Tom Griffith. And the book itself is probably fairly interesting, although a lot of the information is obviously dated because it's from the 1980s. The more interesting thing is that this sold over on Etsy for full price, $39.99, but it sold to someone in, wait for it, Saudi Arabia. I would be very curious to hear what this person thinks of the book once they've read it, but I probably won't ask. And the last thing, I guess you would call this the flip of the week, even though it's not necessarily all that outstanding. I was going through a box of old vintage kind of model railroad guides and magazines and that sort of stuff. I had picked up some big lots over the years, and I haven't quite gotten through all of it yet. And I was working on a box of that stuff, and stuck in a magazine was an envelope. And when I opened the envelope, there were these 4 photos of a vintage Lionel train layout, which appeared to be maybe from the 1940s or 1950s. They were shot in Louisville, Kentucky by a photographer named Art Shryock. Never heard of him, but these photos were just in immaculate condition. And I looked up just kind of vintage black and white photos of Lionel trains, and there appeared to be a market for it. So I put this thing up at an auction starting at $9.99 for these photos. They were essentially free to me because they were in a magazine. I had no idea I even owned them. And this thing got 3 bids and ultimately sold for $47.36 for these 4 vintage photographs. So pretty cool sale. It was neat going through all this stuff. I like model trains anyway. But it was cool seeing those old photos. I took a shot on it, listed it, and ended up being a pretty productive little sale. And that, my friends, is going to put a wrap on this week's episode. Not really a whole ton going on. I debated, to be completely fair, whether I even wanted to do an episode for this week. I was actually sitting down here ready to record this show, and I got a text message from a friend of mine who asked if I needed some shelves and sent me some pictures. And I'm like, man, I really don't. My warehouse is literally jam-packed with shelves already. I don't have any space for them, but I appreciated him letting me know. And he said that another acquaintance of mine, a relative of his, is actually moving to Hawaii and is kind of offloading stuff. So I just sent him a message back and said, hey, if he's got any books he wants to get rid of, let me know. As it turned out, he had about 10 boxes of books and DVDs and a few video games and about 24 records and a whole bunch of stuff. So I spent probably an hour over there visiting with them and picking up all that stuff and then coming home and kind of cataloging and doing that, my pre-sorting of all that. So my day did not go quite to plan, but I decided this evening, it's Sunday evening, fairly late as I record this, and I thought I'd just go ahead and get it knocked out because there was some interesting stuff in the news and a few interesting items in the sales there. So if you found anything interesting, helpful, or useful, do me a favor if you're watching on YouTube and hit that like button. If you're not currently a subscriber to the YouTube channel or a follower of the podcast, please consider doing that as well. And as always, if you could share this with any of your like-minded reselling friends, I would truly appreciate it. As always, I want to thank all of you for spending a little bit of your day with me here at the Galaxy. And now it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.